Well, there were a series of bizarre moments at the White House Easter egg roll. This was just one of them when President Biden answered a reporter's question on Afghanistan when he was suddenly whisked away, get this, by the Easter bunny.
Pakistan should not, and Afghanistan should be.
Oh, the Easter bunny, easy, Mr. President.
This latest awkward moment comes as The Hill reports President Biden told former President Obama that he plans to run for a second term despite his lagging poll numbers. Kennedy, I wonder a lot. I get asked a lot who's running the country, who is they telling the president what to do. There are far more sinister theories than the Easter bunny, so I guess I'll take it. I don't know.
I know the president, and you would know this far better than anyone. No one has proximity to the president. Like, no one can just reach out and touch the president, get within inches of that person, because that is the most powerful person in the world. So how is the Easter bunny right up in his grill, waving in his face? And why is that not a security threat? And why was that giant rodent not tackled by the Secret Service? And if the bunny was a high-placed operative, I want to know who that was. And obviously that was someone that's a minder. You know, that's part of the machine. That's, you know, one of the actors in the Truman Show trying to distract the principal. And that's what was happening there. And frankly, it's creepy because someone in that suit was told to give the president, you know, the stop talking signal.
Give him the pause.
Yeah, and by the way, if he was just being summoned to go to the Easter egg hunt, then someone could have just said, Mr. President, you're wanted at the Easter egg hunt. And that wouldn't have been weird. But the Easter bunny waving in his face, scaring the living crap out of him, that's weird.
Well, I don't know if the Easter bunny is contracted to speak.
Yeah. Good point. Good
Could
point.
be like a Disney character.
Yeah,
so
then-
all he can do is, no. I'm glad we showed the longer video of that rather than just the close-up, because you see the journey that the bunny made. You're right. There's nobody stopping him or her.
And how much planning went into it?
Maybe it was Sean
was
Spicer.
this something that they were concerned about beforehand, and they're like, okay, you're going to wear the bunny suit, and you're going to make sure he doesn't answer any questions, because to your point, that's how much planning goes into this stuff. And I would imagine when you have a sort of non-cognizant person, even more planning goes in.
Yeah, because he did put his arm around the president.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
No bueno.
And no, you
No
make a great
moleste.
point, because, I mean, in no universe would a member of my press shop, certainly a lower level member, be able to just like walk up to President Trump. And maybe it speaks to the power of the press shop, if anything, to have this coordinated plan in the Biden White House. I don't know. But Emily, let's remember, this isn't the only time this Easter egg roll, President Biden said they won't let me read, but he said something similar a lot. Let's take a listen.
They're not going to let me read at all.
They will not let me, understandably, I guess it, cross the border and take a look at what's going on in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC. I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list of the people I'm going to call on.
Any guess as to who they is, Emily?
I feel like we should amend those stickers that are on all the gas things instead of I did this, it should be like I did this, and then underneath that, they told me to. They is my biggest pet peeve grammatically. I hate it when people say that because of that vagueness, because of the imprecision. And coming out of the mouth of the commander-in-chief, it just sounds ridiculous. Maybe once or twice, sure. But all it does is vest him of the power that we, the people, put into his hands. It makes him seem weak and ineffective and even more incompetent than he already is. And I'm sort of sick of it, frankly. I'm sick of this Illuminati, Donnie Darko, Bunny, whoever it was. Like, get him out of here. It's just, it's so annoying.
But despite that fragility, I've always said I think President Biden's running. People tell me I'm crazy, but I just
I think he'll run.
He's apparently told President
Oh my gosh, that ego? There's no way he's going to sit down.
Exactly.
And he knows he's got a crew crazy enough to dress up like a bunny to come and save him. I loved what Charlie said. Okay, now you're going to wear the bunny? like they worked this out. And the fact that they kind of had to shuffle, that's why I like this video. I don't know if they want to put that longer shot up again, where the person in the bunny suit puts an arm around the president and sort of, because the president actually is still standing there. He's like, no Afghanistan, ixnay on the Afghan. I mean, look at this. And then he kind of goes to the next person, and the bunny's like, no, if he can speak. I think Kennedy and I are still wondering whether or not he actually
Hi, I'm right here, Mr. President. It's me, Susan Rice.
Susan Rice. No complaints from the press corps. You'd think they'd complain about this lack of access. But Charlie, if President Biden tells President Obama, I'm going to run, he may run into some troubles. Our brain room digged up the numbers from last time an incumbent got a primary challenger, a serious one, and landed in a contested or a brokered convention. Check this out. So when Reagan declared a primary challenge to Ford, 41% was Ford's approval. Kennedy to Carter, Carter's approval was 32%. Last Quinnipiac had President Biden at 35%. So if he does run, I mean, Buttigieg, I don't know.
And I mean, they have nothing but bad options, which is why they're in the situation they're in. And of course, what we're going to see this fall will be a precursor to what we see in 3 years. But that footage of the bunny rabbit and the president is the perfect video of this presidency and of our times. It is so beyond absurd. It is so ridiculous. And and Biden comes off, he kind of comes off as sort of harmless, which is of course why President Obama picked him in the first place, is because he was kind of harmless. And he makes everything seem sort of harmless. And go back to what you were saying about the they thing. That's a really big issue. The idea that he keeps talking about they means he's not president or somebody else is in charge. That's not how this whole thing works. The way this works is people elect somebody to be president, and then they are president, and they make the decisions. Or that, by they, I mean that person.
We know. Different than.
But when he starts talking about they being in charge, we're in that's deep constitutional
right, because
trouble.
the left did not elect an empty vessel.
Right.
They elected what they deemed to be a benign individual, to your point about being harmless, right? This was someone that was supposed to, in their words, restore a semblance of civility and sort of bridging the gap, restoring decorum, peace. Again, we've gotten, frankly, none of those things. Everything has been exacerbated. Then obviously everything out of this policy has destroyed this country. But in terms of he himself, all he has proven himself to be is this empty vessel, and he speaks to that higher source, the they, and I'm not quite sure when that's going to stop, because I don't know if we can take another 3 years of him essentially delegating power elsewhere.
He does speak his mind on things. The they, which I would assume include the White House press secretary,
yes, it does.
Jen Psaki, they come in and they clean up after him. So you don't even know if they are on the same page.
What's scarier? A geriatric man in cognitive decline who actually has power, or the faceless people around him who are pulling the levers and ruining our lives?
Well,
I think both of those are bad options.
Just last week, you had Jen Psaki cleaning up. He said he was going to Ukraine, and she said, we are not letting him. So to your point, press secretary is among the we, I would think.
And I think voters are getting to the point where they sort of miss the calm days of the Trump administration.
I think so. You're onto something there, Charlie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.